Weird. I thought we were supposed to have MSRP back. Hey everybody, we're gonna be doing some upgrades today, and if you have not checked it out already, there are 2 new commander decks available on the shelves for you to pick up today, but there is a caveat that I need to go ahead and throw out there. While in today's video, we will be talking about upgrading the Aether Drift Commander deck that is called Eternal Might, there is something that is happening right now. Despite the fact that MSRP is supposed to be back in full force for Magic the Gathering, there are some trading card shops that instead of selling these decks for $40 or $45, which is the MSRP, instead, we're getting decks that are being sold for $70 for some reason. This lovely thing that happens whenever a deck gets popular and has cards that people want, somehow that means that the price of the printed cardboard needs to be increased. Also, I'm getting tired of that add to cart button just constantly shaking at me. So this is where I want to say, if you are to pick up this deck, maybe it would be a good idea not to pick it up from any store that is marking up the deck arbitrarily. Go ahead and pick it up from stores that are willing to sell it for the MSRP instead. Anyway, that said, let's go ahead and talk about how this deck feels out of the box. We've got a zombie precon to talk about. Straight out of the box, we have 2 commanders to select from, and one of them, I think, is the reason why this deck is costing as much as it is. While the face commander for the deck is Temet Nachtman's Will, which is a fantastic commander with a win condition and a draw engine built in, the commander that is causing the deck's price to spike is very likely Hashaton, Scarab's Fist. This thing is a CEDH commander in every way, shape, and form. This is the just ability to create infinite combos on a stick, and people have been brewing for weeks on how to break this guy in that format. And being a commander that comes down for the low cost of 2 mana makes him perfect for the fast-paced era of CEDH. That said, that is still no excuse for this deck's price to have skyrocketed as much as it has. But speaking of price, let's go ahead and talk about our upgrade guide here. We're going to be trying to make sure this deck can be upgraded for about $20. So you should be able to get this deck, and if it feels a little clunky, with about $20, you should be able to make this thing absolutely sing. So let's go ahead and talk about how the deck is functioning out of the box. We've got a smothering of zombie strategies here with a bunch of lords and anthems, 8 of them to be exact, some of which work on zombie tokens and some of which do not work on tokens, they just work on every other zombie. We've also got a pretty strong 11-card draw engine here as well, which is nice to see. There's a side engine of a burn strategy with the Scarab God being the top end of that. 2 pretty good board wipes. I like Dam and I like Dusk Dawn. Both of these are great. It's got really decent ramp. The ever normal inclusion of Commander Sphere being in here is people like it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And there's even some plane cycling and swamp cycling in the deck, and there's a thankful reprint of Crowded Crypt. This mana rock started to get very expensive because it was only printed in a Precon prior to this, so hopefully we'll start to see this card's price start to dip. And of course, because it is a zombie deck, there is a reanimation sub-theme in here, with Hashaton being the face of that, but with the lovely Gravecrawler and Rothulk and Liliana's Death's Majesty being ways to reanimate other cards, with Vizier of Many Faces being one of the cards that can embalm and reanimate himself effectively. There's a 9-card dedicated removal and interaction package here, but this is probably one of the weakest removal and interaction packages I've seen in a Precon. We've got overcosted cards like Cast Out in here solely so that they can fill in the void of being a cycle card. We've got Angel of Sanctions in here, which is just a really I don't like this card. It's kind of a bad Oblivion Ring that really only works when you're reanimating it, and embalming it for 6 is just not worth it most of the time. I think that because most players are not playing control decks, they don't want removal to be the only thing they're doing on their turn, so having high-costed removal just doesn't make any sense. And while Never Return is very flavorful in here, this is possibly one of the worst removal pieces I've seen printed in a Commander Precon in a decent bit of time. A 3-mana murder that only works at sorcery speed is just not great, and its Aftermath ability makes a single zombie token by getting rid of a single card in a graveyard, but again, at sorcery speed, which is not what you want in this effect. When you have a card like Never Return, what you are looking for is instant speed on both of these so that you can interact with threats when they pop on the board, and with Return's Aftermath ability, I would be willing to include this in the deck if Return worked at instant speed. Because if my opponent is reanimating a card, I want to be able to stop that thing from coming out, period. But since it is a zombie deck, zombies always have a great sub-theme of tokens, and in this deck we have some interesting choices here. I've never been a fan of Dread Summons, and Dreadhorde Invasion is also an interesting include in here since we have an Amass sub-theme within the tokens sub-theme, but the Amass mechanic isn't very good outside of commanders that just distinctly deal with it, so we're probably going to be cutting that. And there's a Maskwood Nexus in here, which I'm okay with because it does lower the cost of the card for people who want to play it, but I don't know what it's doing in here. 29 of the 36 creatures in the deck are already zombies. This means Maskwood Nexus only sometimes generates you tokens at a very bad rate of return, or it converts those 7 non-zombie creatures into zombies, which you weren't really too worried about doing in the first place because they didn't matter too terribly much for the deck strategy. If you've already got about 30 zombies in your deck, you're already doing fine. You can have some non-zombies. It's okay. As for the mana base in the deck as it stands, we have 5 of every basic land with 4 of the island basic land, and then in the dual land section, we have pretty much the usual suspects of a mana base. I don't hate this mana base. It's got Temple of Silence, Temple of Deceit. I understand why temples are put into the precons. I don't hate them in the precons, but they will certainly be getting cut out of our build. We are also seeing some good includes in here, like Drowned Catacomb and all of the other check lands. We have 3 Pain lands in here, Caves of Kolios, Arakar Waste and such, and Underground River. These are all great includes, and the Tango lands are in here as well. That's good. We also have some fetching lands. We're running both Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, and an Ash Barrens. Ash Barrens serves double duty in the deck because it has cycling. And then we have the Omni lands. Of course, it is a precon, so we're going to have an Arcane Sanctum in here. And it is a tribal precon, so we are going to have a Path of Ancestry. These are okay when we have to get them, but we are going to be cutting some of these out of the final build. Finally, for the utility lands, we have some great includes and some interesting suggestions. We have Unholy Grotto, which gives us the ability to recur zombies, and Accursed Dune Yard, which gives us the ability to protect zombies. And then, for the interesting suggestion the deck throws at us, we have 3 deserts. Desert of the True, Mindful, and Glorified. Each of these gives us the ability to cycle from our hand in order to draw extra cards if we get mana flooded. Now, the reason I like these is they allow us to A, prevent ourselves from being mana flooded, and B, if you remember, our commander's special ability, Temet, allows us to give all zombies +1/+1 whenever we draw a card. And whenever we attack, we get to draw a card and discard a card to begin with. So minimum, Temet is going to be giving our zombies +2/+2 every turn because of the card we draw at the beginning of the turn, and of course the card we draw when we swing. And then of course those lands give us even more ways to cycle. But this deck wants to have a cycling sub-theme, and I don't think we need to be leaning in that route. We'll take cycling when it's convenient, and we'll remove cycling when it's not. So, let's go ahead and talk about the cards that are not going to be making the list in the final build. In the base version of the deck, we have a median average mana value of 3.47 with all of our mana cost accounted for. Let's go ahead and lower that mana value down somewhere closer to 3.31. I want to make sure that we can cast cards on curve way faster, and precons usually have some overcosted cards. On to the cuts. Gem Palm Polluter definitely does not need to be in this deck. It has a cycling ability, which is fine, but making an opponent lose life, a single opponent lose life equal to the number of zombies on the battlefield, is not worth the 2 mana in my book. Plague Belcher also needs to go. The sub-theme of the deck for Burn is okay, but there is a different include that I would rather have in here instead. The area where we're going to be making the most truncations, though, is the draw section. Champion of Wits It discards cards and draws cards, but it only ever does it once, and it's not a zombie. Gate to the Afterlife does this ability multiple times, but only when your non-token creatures die, and this is mostly in here for the other overcosted thing we'll talk about a little later. It's leaving as well. Pull from Tomorrow wants us to pay a lot of mana that we are not trying to ramp into, so it's going to leave. Forgotten Creation is going to leave as well, because its ability only works on our upkeep without the ability to control this in any meaningful way during our own turn. It's just going to sit on the board and then either get blasted or not work well for us. I don't think the card's terrible, but there is a more controllable way to do this style of effect that we are going to be adding in instead, and space needed to be made somewhere. Midnight Reaper is also getting cut. It only works with our non-tokens, so half of our deck doesn't even see this. Commence the Endgame makes a token and draws cards, but it costs 6 mana, and that is way too much, because when I am spending 6 mana on a thing, I want it to have a lot of board impact, not be a very, very strong divination spell. Then we have Corpse Augur. When this dies, we draw lots of cards and lose some life, which is fine. However, there is one big problem with this. Our deck lacks sack outlets, so we have no way of guaranteeing when this card is going to go. We could literally just sit with this card stranded on our board for multiple turns, and I don't want that. Now, next, let's go ahead and talk about the ramp spells. Commander's Sphere is a 3-mana ramp spell, but on turn 3, I'd rather be playing an impactful card. Twisted Abomination and Timeless Dragon are fine in their own right, but in a deck like this, they're really only here for their cycling abilities, and if we just make our land base a little more fine-tuned, we don't need to spend mana into fixing our lands in our hand anywhere near as often. In the reanimation section, Gravecrawler is leaving because, again, without sack outlets, this card just is without a home in a deck like this. Then we have Vizier of Many Faces. It can clone neat things, but without being a zombie on its own, there are some zombie synergies in the grave we won't be able to use it for, and really, we could just run another card that does good effects instead of trying to clone something already on our board. Then we have the God Pharaoh's Gift, which is being cut because this card's not good. Like, for 7 mana, if we are in a position where this card is on the board, it's giving us zombies, but it is making those zombies get exiled from our grave, which prevents us from being able to utilize them for any other strategies, and it's asking us a lot of mana to pay for it. And yes, I know there are some times where we'll be able to pay for it using our burn card I mentioned before, but I'm gonna be honest, it just feels like a clunky include. I don't think we need to be doing this. Then for removal and interaction, Binding Mummy needs to go. Being able to tap things on our opponent's board is fine, but this feels kind of strange when we're also running strategies that want zombies to die. I just think all of that stuff just doesn't need to be in here. Angel of Sanctions, I already mentioned, it's overcosted for what it does. Never Return needs to leave, and Cast Out, again, is overcosted for what it's asking. For zombie tokens, we're going to be getting rid of the Dreadhorde Invasion, as this only really works when we have a good sack outlet, or we have cards that really, really benefit from that amass. And since we are cutting Lazotep Chancellor as well, we're not really digging super hard into that amass. Also, the reason we're cutting the Chancellor isn't because it's a bad card, it's because it asks us to pay 1 mana every time we discard a card, and if we're already discarding cards with things like cycling, we're already paying that mana, and we want the ability to cast cards a lot instead of constantly feeding our mana into various once-and-done effects. Speaking of feeding mana into these effects, Nazqua Nexus needs to leave, and Dread Summons needs to leave as well. The mana these cards ask us to spend for getting a handful of tokens is insane, and not really worth it if we're trying to make this deck a little stronger. And Wizened Mentor, this is an interesting card. It generates white zombie creature tokens, but only ever once a turn, and only in the specific scenario where our opponents are using activated abilities, and I'm sorry, but it's only activated abilities of permanence as well, so if they are using things like Channel, we're not benefiting from that either. This is just a very, very interesting way to make a bad Bloodthirsty Conqueror. Finally, in the land section, we're going to be cutting both of the temples and the Arcane Sanctum, and we will also be getting rid of a smothering of basic lands. Whew, that is a lot of things to cut out of the original deck, and 27 cards, not counting the basic lands. So what the hell are we doing with all of that space? All right, let's go ahead and take care of the big one right now. Almost half of the budget of this deck for the upgrade is being eaten up by Varina Lich Queen. This card with this deck is a win condition in and of herself, and she also allows us to make zombie tokens if we want as well. This monster is a beast. Verena says when we attack with one or more zombies, draw as many cards as we swung with zombies, and then discard that many cards as well and gain that much life. Gaining that life is fantastic. It allows us to weather aggro versus aggro matchups, but the big thing for me is that when we have this on the board with our commander, and we swing with 5 zombies per se, our commander is going to be yielding 5 damage to all of our zombies, making it just, it's very, very hard to fathom how much damage we are sinking onto our board. And we have a second copy of this effect as well, if you would believe it. We have Rafine's Scheming Seer in here as well. Rafine says when we attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. This is just an extra copy of Verena Lich Queen, giving us access to way more combat damage. And this is one of the reasons why we're removing one of our burn zombies out of the deck. We are going to be talking about that here in a minute. We are focusing heavy on zombie combat. Now, there's a type of card that I am a massive fan of in basically any game of Magic the Gathering where I can jam them in, and that is looters. Looters sculpt your hand and make your hand nice and wonderful, but they also do a lot of work in a deck like this. They allow us every turn to have a draw and discard clause, discarding things to the grave to reanimate, drawing cards to trigger our commander, and powering up our zombies. These cards are fantastic. And then we have other looters like Dreadwind Scavenger, which loots when it swings and when it ETBs, Vohar, which loots when we tap it and can also cast instant and sorceries from our grave, Merfolk Looter, which loots when we tap it, Obsessive Stitcher, which loots and also reanimates when we choose. This is also a card that has caused people at my LGS to get a little worried whenever I'm playing Sauron. Obsessive Stitcher is a goat. And finally, we have a Teferi's Ageless Insight. I'm normally not a big fan of effects like this, as they are just extenders, but since our commander has the ability to draw cards every turn baked into its ability, then Teferi's Ageless Insight always has a card to eat from. And anytime we use a looter, this means we get to draw 2, discard 1. Teferi's Ageless Insight extends all of our looters into much stronger variants of themselves, and it makes our commander do infinitely more work as well. Also, I mentioned we cut one of our burning zombies for a reason, and that is because we are adding in a Diagraph Captain instead. This card gives your zombies 1/1 and also has the ability to burn our opponents as well. I think this is a much better use of deck economy because this is giving us a Lord and a Burner all in one package. Our ramp package, we removed 1 true ramp spell and 2 cyclers, so let's go ahead and add in a true ramp spell to replace it. Charitable Levy is a fantastic ramp spell that gets you any planes out of your deck so we can get dual lands, and also it replaces itself by drawing a card. So this is filling in the same kind of slot as the Command Sphere is, but in a much better way in my opinion. Then for reanimation, we're going to add in a Dread Return so that we can sack zombies to play zombies and also just get more zombies out. Victimize to sack zombies and get lots of zombies. Zombie Apocalypse to summon a ton of zombies from the grave. Zul Asher Lich Lord to get zombies out of the grave whenever we damn well please. And Sun Titan because we're already running a Grave Titan anyway, and if we're going to have a couple of top ends to reanimate, Sun Titan and Grave Titan are both great cards to reanimate and just cause yourself to gain a ton of advantage over the course of a game. Then, for upgrades for interaction, we're going to be adding in an Accursed Marauder. The original deck comes with a Playcrafter, but it's a Fleshbag Marauder. The original deck comes with a Fleshbag Marauder, and while I love Fleshbag Marauder, the card doesn't work on its own. It really wants other cards to supplement it so that it can actually clean a board up. So, Accursed Marauder is one such card. A Zombie Warrior works with our deck and just is a fantastic way to remove cards from the board. Ravenous Rotbelly also removes cards at a great rate, sacrificing up to 3 zombies and allowing us to just get rid of that many creatures on every other player's board when we do so. This is the type of support that a Fleshbag Marauder needs in order to function. Then we're also going to get rid of some of the bad removal and replace them with good removal, like Generous Gift that gets rid of any type of permanent, Feed the Swarm, which gets rid of enchantments and creatures, and then a Stroke of Midnight, which gets rid of any non-land permanent for the low cost of giving an opponent a 1/1 white human creature token. If I am spending 3 mana on a removal spell, this is probably my silver standard, with Generous Gift being my gold standard, as Gen Gift can get rid of lands, and Stroke of Midnight gets rid of everything that is not a land. Let's also make sure that our token production is supplemented well with Crypt Caller Chariot. Every time we discard one or more cards, create that many tapped black zombie creature tokens. Endless Ranks of the Dead will make 2/2 zombie creature tokens for every zombie that we already have out, and the Death Tyrant says anytime one of our creatures or one of our opponent's creatures die whenever our zombie is swinging and they're blocking, we can spawn a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Also, the Death Tyrant can be reanimated by its own effect from the graveyard at any point, so we always have access to this wonderful token engine. Finally, for land upgrades, we're going to be adding in the Barren Moor, the Lonely Sandbar, and the Secluded Steppe. If the deck wants us to have cycling lands, let's go ahead and add in more cycling lands, but specifically ones that only cost 1 mana, so that it is easier to make use of them. Also, the Precon should have came with a Contaminated Landscape, but it did not. Contaminated Landscape can grab any basic land from the deck and also can cycle for 3. Let's also add in the utility lands of Windbrisk Heights and Bajuka Bog to get rid of cards in graveyards and freely cast cards respectively. Then let's add in a few more dual lands to make the deck just a bit stronger. Tainted Field and Tainted Isle. I know that some people are not really big fans of these cards, but I think it's easy enough to get a swamp out. And then we have Darkwater Catacombs and Skycloud Expanse, 2 cards that allow us to have more access to filtering, which is fantastic. Though, I wish we could have added Desolate Mire in here as well. Unfortunately, it's like $1.50 at the moment because it hasn't been reprinted recently, and I feel like this deck would have been a great place to reprint it, but you know, that's just me. But anyways, that is everything we are adding into the deck. Lots and lots of cards and just about at $20. So now that we've added everything in here, let's go ahead and talk about how to actually play this thing so you know how it's running now that we've gone ahead and done some upgrades. Any hand that includes ramp and zombie token production is a-okay in my book, as our commander will give us access to draw, so we don't need to worry too much about that. Looking at our opening hand, we have a Soul Ring, which already makes me not want to consider this a valid game test, but hey, we have it in the opening hand, let's go ahead and take it. Let's go ahead and draw our opening card. We have Hashaton, and we're going to play an Exotic Orchard and just tap it to get that Soul Ring out. We might as well. We move into the next turn, and we've drawn Wayward Servant, one of our zombie burn cards. Let's go ahead and play Darkwater Catacombs, and let's go ahead and tap all of these to get Endless Rank of the Dead on the board. While it is not going to be able to generate anything for us right now, it does at least put us in a good position for later. Moving into turn 3, we have a Swords to Plowshares drawn. I would have liked to have drawn another land, but it's fine. We're going to Bajuka Bog an opponent's graveyard. They lose a fetch land, I guess. And we're going to go ahead and look at where we're at right now. Temet Nakaman's Will could be coming out soon. 5 mana is a bit costly. We don't have the mana to sink into Grave Titan, so I think maybe it's going to be 1, 2, 3. We're going to go ahead and tap 4, and we're just going to go ahead and put Hashaton out. No, Wayward Servant. We're going to put Wayward Servant out on the board. We have to tap everything to make that work because of the way filter lands work, but that's okay. We move into turn 4, and we've gotten a Verena Lich Queen. This is actually something that I really want at this stage of the game. So whenever we attack with one or more zombies, draw that many cards and discard that many cards. Endless Ranks of the Dead gives us no tokens because we only have 1 zombie out. So we're going to go ahead and pay 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go ahead and get Verena out? No. Let's go and get the commander out. We'll get the commander out, we'll move into combat, and if somebody doesn't have a blocker, we're swinging with the Wayward Servant to draw a card and discard a card. Looking at where we're at right now, I think the Grave Titan can just kind of go away. I'd like it later, but we have reanimation. This means we can get the command tower out and we can finally stop having a kind of weird mana situation. Also, when our opponent does anything on their turn, we can now Swords to Plowshare them. When our turn comes up, we get to go ahead and make a zombie token, and we've drawn an Underground River, but I don't think the time to play it is now. I think right now, the correct thing to do is to play our lovely, lovely Verena. This pops out onto the battlefield, and now when we swing with our zombies, we're going to get some wonderful, wonderful kickback. We're swinging in with both our commander, and we are going to go ahead and swing in with our Wayward Servant. When we do this, Temet is going to draw us a card and then discard a card. We've drawn Ravenous Rotbelly. Let's go ahead and knock it to the graveyard. And Verena will allow us to draw let's see, draw that many cards and then discard that many cards. So we are going to draw 2 and discard 2. We do not have a swamp on the battlefield, so the 2 cards we're discarding are both the Tainted Field and the Tainted Isle. Those go away. Our creatures have... So our Wayward Servant is swinging for 6 right now. Our commander is swinging for 7 right now with everything we've done. So now, let's go ahead and go into turn 6. Endless Ranks of the Dead is going to spawn 2 zombie tokens for us, but we're exactly where we want to be now. We're not going to worry about playing any of our lands at the moment. Actually, we do need to play one. We're going to do the Underground River, and we're going to pay that, and then we're going to go ahead and summon Heshaton. Now, we can swing with 4 of our zombies, and we are going to do just that. We're swinging in with 4 zombies, which means we are going to have 1 draw and discard ability. We're going to discard the Terramorphic Expanse, and then we're going to draw and discard 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. I would have loved any of these cards, but they're all going into the graveyard right now, which is unfortunate. I wanted Heshaton to be able to reanimate a thing, but as it stands, this means we have drawn 5 cards. So our zombies are swinging in, our Wayward Servant swinging in for 7, our commander swinging in for 9, and Verena is swinging in for 9 as well. Actually, no, the Wayward Servant swinging in for 10 because we drew a card for the beginning of the turn. So we're actually in a really, really strong position. And this has Vigilance and Menace, so it's not actually swinging. So this is where we're at on turn 6. If nobody stops us, we basically get to run away with the game. As it stands, I think the correct thing to do on an opponent's turn is to tap 1, 2, 3, 4, and use our commander's... not commander. We're going to use Vishaton's ability, and we're going to get rid of 1, 2, 3, 4 cards out of our grave. These all go into exile, and they will spawn 2 zombies for us. This is so that we could get more power out of our Endless Ranks of the Dead, and we have more zombies to swing on our turn. Moving into turn 7, we draw Lost Monarch, which gives all of our zombies Afflict. This means if they are blocked, they will make a depending player lose 3 life anyway, and if a zombie deals combat damage, we can then mill 3 and return any creature card from our graveyard to our hand. So, what I want to do right now is we're going to calculate Endless Ranks of the Dead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We spawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zombie tokens. These cannot swing yet. These zombie tokens can swing. And let's see what we're going to be doing in terms of damage right now. If we swing with everything, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll be drawing 10 cards, so our zombies get plus 11, 11, and then we'll be discarding 10 cards, which means we're going to get a lot of instances where Heshaton can get his ability. So we're going to do this and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here's all of our draws. All right. As we discard down, let's go ahead and discard the Corpse Knight. That's going to go away, and we are going to pay 1, 3. Corpse Knight token is out on the board. Let's just go ahead and call this. Yep, there's the Corpse Knight token. Then we have Rafine here. I don't really care about Rafine. God Eternal Oketra went away. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 1 more creature we can get. I think? No. It's the Death Tyrant. The Death Tyrant we make the token copy of. Because the Death Tyrant, yep, and then all of these just go to the grave. We'll keep Zombie Apocalypse in our hand, though. So the reason we're going to be keeping the Death Tyrant over and above everything else is if our opponents block anything here, we'll just spawn more tokens. But in terms of raw damage, on turn 7, we are hitting with... every single one of these is swinging for 11 minimum, so the Heshaton's swinging for 12. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 creatures swung. Is it 9? Yeah, 9 creatures swung. And all of our creatures have plus 11 power. So we are swinging with 100 damage right now. If anybody loses a creature in combat, we'll be spawning more tokens, and because we chose the Corpse Knight to come out, every token that we are spawning when our opponents try to defend themselves is also burning them for more and just causing us to just run away with our game plan. And if for some reason they never get rid of our endless ranks of the dead, then when our turn comes up, we're spawning, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We're spawning 9 zombies, burning everybody for 9, so everybody's taking a combined total of 27 damage when our turn comes up, and that's assuming that nobody has a board wipe, but we've probably killed the people with bigger hands, so they're not board wiping us anytime soon. That's a turn 7 kill, and they're very lethal turn 7 kill. Man, the amount of damage this deck put out on turn 7 is crazy, and when we're talking about a casual deck, a Precon upgrade, that's nutty. That's nutty. Now, granted, we gutted a third of the deck, but I feel like what we came up with was still really, really powerful, and we've kept some great iconic cards from the original build. Scarab God is still in here, Grave Titan is still in here, Liliana is still in here, you still have some of the somewhat more clunky draws like Undead Augur. They're still in here doing their jobs, but the cards we've added in have made the deck infinitely more powerful. The only weakness the deck runs into is not having a huge hand, because we are relying so much on looting instead of straight up card draw. But we do still get to see lots of cards in our deck, and we do still get to win the game very, very handedly with those cards. That said, I do want to know if you guys enjoyed this particular Precon upgrade, and if you did, let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if there's anything that you would have included in here that I did not include, please let me know down there, along with what kind of a budget we would be spending on that card. That all said, thank you all for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you being here, and just sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for letting me get this close to 10,000 subscribers on the channel. Y'all are amazing. If you want to support me on Patreon, you can do that. I would love that. But if you're just watching the videos, thank you very much for being here as well. As always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I really could not do any of this without all of you. Those of you watching, and especially those of you who support me on Patreon. I wanted to go ahead and take a minute to thank all of you who do that, because with YouTube being what it is these days, I really cannot do this full time without the support from each and every one of you. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Britzkrieg, Jupe the Malignant, Michael, Ravelern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Tales of Atonement, Nixie Chan, Kiri Artemis, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying the last part of that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fireshard. Thank you so very much. But since you're here, why not go ahead and try watching another one? There should be one that's on the screen right now. And if you are a patron of mine, I wanted to go ahead and thank you again for all of your support. There is still a video you could press though, if you'd like. I would appreciate it just a little bit.